Look at the variety and colors in this bouquet. I cannot wait to show you guys how to make this one. The flowers that we'll be using in today's bouquet include some red roses, some fuchsia roses, some lilies, and over here we have some spray roses. We have some bicolor spray roses with the pinks on the outside and the purples in the center. Aren't those just gorgeous? And then we have some of these bicolor spider mums as well. We'll just be using a little bit of tapata leaves. And these are billy balls, or also known as caspedia. And then we have some greenery, some eucalyptus that we'll be putting around as a collar around the bouquet. And then let's talk about the supplies we'll need. So we'll need some pruning shears to cut the stems with. And then we also have floral tape, some scissors to cut the ribbon that will be going around the handle, and then some corsage pins just to finish off the ribbon and make it look pretty. Oh, and we also have some glue, a little bit of glue gun just to adhere the ribbon onto itself. Okay, so now that we have that out of the way, let's get started. The flowers should be prepped before you start arranging them. And what I mean by prepped is to remove any leaves or anything that you're not going to be using in the bouquet. And especially for these lilies, I've already removed some of the stamens on here because these will stain your clothes or any other fabrics. And of course, we don't want those on the bride's dress. So what you would do is just to take a tissue and then surround it on those stamens and just hold, pinch your fingers together lightly, and then just pull up. And then that captures all of the little stamen tips with the, see all that pollen that's starting to come off there? Toss that. And then to prep the roses, roses are typically transported with their guard petals on. So see how the outer petals are damaged, but that's okay. So what you want to do is just go ahead and pull those petals off that are not looking so pretty. And that one even has a little black on it, so I'm going to pull that one off as well. And then for this particular bouquet, we are not going to be using the leaves, so I will pull those off. And then lastly, you want to get rid of any thorns. So I'm going to go ahead and snip those off. And sometimes at the very top, there will be these tiny little thorns, almost the size of a pin. And I use the back of my pruning shears to just rub against the stem, and that takes away the sharp points quickly. We are going to work on setting up the spider mums first, because as you notice, there's a lot of space here, which makes it somewhat difficult to put together in the bouquet because flowers typically like to press up against each other. And I'll just use this as an example. If I were to put this rose against this spider mum, see how it presses up against there and makes it a little too tight? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use other flowers that are naturally spaced wide apart. For instance, we have these spray roses. Notice how the spray roses are spread apart. So for instance, there's a lot of empty space here. And so I'm going to use that to our advantage and go ahead and insert this spider mum right into that space. And then at this point, I can decide how high or low I would like the roses to appear. So I either can have the roses above the spider mums, or I can have the mums slightly above the spray roses. And I think I like the look of the spider mums slightly above. So I will go ahead and tape this together so that it stays as one unit. Okay, I went about around that with the tape about 3 times. Set that aside and we'll work on our next one. Let's see, we have another set of spray roses here. And again, just inserting between here. And this time I'm going to allow the spray roses to rise above the spider mum. With this floral tape, when you're wrapping it around the stems, you want to pull lightly on the tape because there is adhesive inside. And so when you continue to twirl it, the tape will stick onto itself. For this next Spider-Man, we're going to be using these lilies to insert between here, the Spider-Man between there. This one, I'm deciding to leave them about the same height as the lilies. Okay, now I'm just helping some of those petals stay up or go upward. Now that we have the Spider-Mans all set, we can add other materials. So I'll go ahead and add some of these leaves into this space in between here. And I'd like to add some roses next. You'll notice that it's starting to create somewhat of a dome shape. And so you want to pay attention to that as you're adding more stems to the sides. And I like to have maybe 1/4 of an inch between the inner petal, or the inner bloom and the outer bloom. Trick to allowing a little bit of space between the flowers is to angle the stems. From the main bunch, angle the stem. See how if I really angle it, you can have more space between the lily and the rose? Well, if I want it a little bit closer, then I would put the angle not as great. So that seems about right for me. Let's add some more spider mums to this. And I'm treating this as one unit. So again, I would angle it. To the main bunch. And so I'm treating this as the center, and see how the dome shape is being built out. And yes, you will notice that this does create quite of a, it's very splayed out, but that's fine. Because we don't want the spider mums to be squished up against there. See, if I did the stems more upright, then it would just be really squished, and I don't want that look. So I'm going to allow it to angle out. This one, you really want to put plenty of tape just because the angle is quite a bit, and so you want to make sure that it's really secured. Add some more roses before I add the next set of spider mums. Oh, and it looks like I missed on peeling back these guard petals. And so I'm noticing there's a space in between here that I'd like to go ahead and fill in. So I'm going to add some of these cute little flowers here. So just insert it right in between there just to fill up that empty void. I'm noticing how the spider mums are looking a little bit squished there. So at this point, I do want to readjust as I go just to make sure that I'm not ending up with an arrangement where the flowers look too tight. I really need to form out the shape on the sides. It looks like it's somewhat of a dome this way already. So now I have an option of filling in this side or this side. So I'll go ahead and just add the spider mums just because they take up a lot of space, and that will really help me to determine where the rest of the flowers need to go. I had to feel around for where this stem would be stabilized, so I inserted it between these two here because you really want it to be pressed up against the main bunch. so that it can really stay where it needs to stay. That looks good, so I'm going to go ahead and add the tape now. At this point, we don't want to get too far along before we add some of our accent yellows, because I do want it to be somewhat spread evenly about in this arrangement. So I'll go ahead and insert the billy ball into that empty space there. And sometimes I like to have two close to each other to create more impact with color. I put them at slightly different heights because that does add more interest. See, I didn't want to have them both at the same height. You know, having them exactly at the same height like that just doesn't look as pretty. So I am lowering one of those. We'll do the same. I'll add a couple more billy balls to this side. And now we'll just continue adding roses. And making sure not to cover any of the flowers that are towards the center. So I lower the roses as needed. And this is going to help fill in the sides of this bouquet too. So as you'll see, the dome shape is coming along this way. Okay, so since we have this side kind of filled in, I want to go ahead and try to fill in this side. As you're placing each stem, because we are filling in the sides right now, as you're placing each stem, go ahead and allow the side portions of the flowers that are already in the bouquet to show. That way you're not wasting any flower stems, because it's somewhat a waste to cover up the spray rose and the side view of that spider lily. So see how I've really lowered this rose as I placed it on there? And as you go along, you notice any damaged petals, you go ahead and just pull those off so that your end product is a beautiful bouquet. At this point, I want to determine where the bottom of the bouquet is, so this seems like a good point to have it fill out at this level. So I'm trying not to put this too low, because then I'm creating another, I guess, level that I would need to fill in. So I'm just going to try to just fill in this empty space here and keep all the colors at a level. I'm going to cut all the stems off at the same time at the same length, but just for now, I'm just going to cut this down a little bit because it's getting in the way while I'm working on it. And now we're ready to add some of the greenery. As you're adding the greenery, make sure not to cover up any of the flowers. You just want it to be covering up just the very bottom parts of the flowers. And these are going to be a little too low here, so I'm going to pluck those off. Just because we know that where the tape is where the handle will be. Now that I have all the leaves on the bouquet, I'm going to use the floral tape and wrap it around several times to form a nice smooth surface for the ribbon to go on top of. See how the ribbon is fairly flat all the way through here? That's what I wanted. We'll be using a 1/4 inch grass grain ribbon today. And I will start the ribbon off in the back. So this seems to be the prettiest to me. So this is the front side. And therefore I will start the ribbon back here towards the bottom. And then wrap it around so that wraps up the stem. And as you are coming back to where the end of the ribbon was, make sure you cover the bottom so that it's not sticking out and looks nice and neat. And you just keep wrapping until all the tape is covered up. So now that we're back at the back side of the bouquet, I'm going to just put a little dot of glue. I'm going to hold the ribbon back over that little glue dot just for a few seconds until it dries. Okay. And then you just take your scissors and you snip as close to that glue dot as possible. And then I'll just add a couple of these pins just to pretty it up. So in the center of the front side, I will stick the pins upward. And I stick the pins upward because the ends of the pins will not likely show. Okay, so there we go. And last step is to trim the stems. So I hold it as if the bride would be holding this. So I imagine right here. And so wherever the bottom hand is, I give a couple of inches. So I would say just right about here. All right, there we go.